One of our main functions as a little PBIS department is professional development. We provide professional development for our coaches, but also teachers and other staff, administrators, on a variety of topics. These change every year just depending on what the needs are in the county. But this year, what I had found, I'm in my second year as the PBIS coordinator, and as Lee had mentioned previously, I'd been a school psychologist. I had been a PBIS coach, one of these coaches, as a school psychologist when a couple of my schools first started implementing PBIS. And so because I was a school psychologist, I was just kind of assigned to that coaching role. It really wasn't a choice, which is a little uncomfortable. And so we noticed through our own experiences and getting feedback from coaches that not everybody is comfortable in that leadership position, and not everybody is comfortable facilitating a team, especially when that team includes their administrators. So we took a little bit of a step back this year, and we sent out a survey to our coaches and looked at their coaching skills and their leadership skills. And we noticed that one area that all coaches felt they were weakest in, it didn't matter if they were a school psychologist, school counselor, teacher, dean, the lowest area, the weakest area for them was database decision making. So this year we've done much more training in not only facilitating teams, but also in data analysis, data management, and how to communicate that data to administrators and to whole school staff. And what we found, because we did a pre and post survey with our data training, we found that their efficacy definitely increased after having that training. So they really wanted to understand the data, where it comes from, how it works, so that they could explain it to others, and that really hadn't been provided to them before. So really investing in our coaches is just one of our top priorities. We provide division-wide training on classroom management systems. And let me see if I can pull this link up here for you. Yep. So classroom management systems or classroom practices, these are practices that have been found to increase achievement. These are the practices that give you the biggest bang for your buck. And this isn't kid management. It's not how you manage people. It's how you manage the structure of your room, as well as just overall behaviors, but not necessarily a people managing practice. So the 8 practices are arranging orderly physical environments. That's really looking at how's your classroom set up, and then defining, teaching, acknowledging rules and expectations, routines, active supervision, which some of these things might sound like, well, yeah, of course you're going to supervise kids, but the way you do it is important. And like I had mentioned, a lot of teachers don't get behavior management, classroom management training, and so this is really important for them. Behavior-specific praise, which is giving people specific feedback on what they're doing, as well as correcting errors while maintaining relationships, was important. And then giving people opportunities to respond rather than expecting that every kid's just going to raise their hand to participate. We also provide training on what we call class-wide group contingencies, which takes the place of those clip charts maybe you've seen in classrooms before, where you're really kind of shaming kids for their behavior. So this is an alternative to that type of individual behavior system. So I just wanted to give you a quick look at that. Oops. We also do a lot of training with equitable discipline and learning practices. We've primarily started that this year. Myself and another school psychologist have been providing these trainings where we talk about privilege, implicit bias, microaggressions, assumptions in the media that relate to how we form implicit bias, and then how to correct for all of those things. So teaching people how to just stop, think through their own biases and what's going on with the child and making better discipline decisions. And Lee had mentioned that we had presented on that at an international conference, which was just last week. So a lot of good work is being done there right now in our system. We provide professional development on Tier 2 type interventions, which I mentioned were more of those group type interventions where maybe 10 kids in your school might need this more just a different type of intervention, a little bit more than the core, the foundational behavioral structures you have in place. And then we also provide professional development on teaming structures and integration of those teams, which leads us to integration. So we've moved more into a multi-tiered system of supports, like I mentioned earlier, where we're focusing on bringing together PBIS, response to intervention, and mental health, where before and currently, those were all siloed. They were their own separate things, not really working together, which causes logistical issues, but also philosophical issues. I mean, we're looking at a whole child perspective, so we should all be working together for that child. Before, schools were having separate team meetings for all of these things, which takes up a lot of time, and weren't really communicating with each other on what they were doing. So there could be overlap of strategies and interventions, and sometimes some competing interventions. So we're really moving more towards this integrated system. It is a slow integration because with 92 schools, we can't expect everyone to do this at the same time. So we're starting slow, and right now we have 3 early implementer schools for a full integration of those systems. And we're doing that with the support of a grant from the state of Virginia through their Virginia tiered system of support. So we do have statewide support for that. I know we're getting close to the hour. This is just a illustration of multi-tiered system of support and why, looking at the whole child. So sometimes we have kids who they're doing fine academically, reading, writing, math, all of those skills are fine. They're getting what they need through core. Maybe they have great social skills. Their friendships, relationships are pretty good, but they have got a lot of anxiety. So while they don't need increased support for academics, they might not need increased support for behavior. They definitely need increased intensive support for mental health. And that's why we look at this multi-tiered system. Within Loudoun County last year, as part of developing this multi-tiered system of supports, we did some resource mapping and we laid out what we have available at each tier. So in Tier 1, again, that's our systems level, that's the core, it's the foundation that all kids get. We laid out all of those strategies for behavioral interventions, academic, and social emotional strategies and interventions. And then we did the same thing for Tier 2 and then Tier 3. And so this is what it looks like in Loudoun County. We had each of our individual schools create their own pyramid of interventions and strategies as well, so that they could make it more personalized. Some schools have other things, other types of programs or curriculums that they use for behavior or for social, emotional, mental health. And so they call those different things. And so they've got their own pyramid. This has really helped for not only school staff, but also families to understand all of the things that are available and what is available within each school. So that was a quick overview of what PBIS is and how we implement and use it here in Loudoun County. Are there any questions? I was just kind of glancing at some of the responses that Lee had received from, I think when she had asked, what did you want to get out of this? What did you want answered from this webinar? So I was just glancing at that to see if there are a couple other things that I could answer for you.
Hey, Lisa, one of the things that might be helpful is if you could share with them, what do you think the greatest challenge was initially in terms of rolling out PBIS compared to what might be the greatest challenge now for you all? Sure.
So definitely the greatest challenge initially was getting schools on board. I remember, again, as a PBIS coach in that early period, our school voted to do PBIS, and the challenge for us was really understanding what PBIS was, what the purpose was, and really all of those behavior analysis principles that were behind it. Even as a school psychologist, I was kind of like, well, what are we supposed to be doing? And then it turned into, oh, it must be about this recognition system. We got to come up with this fancy system of recognizing kids and handing out tickets and then having these great rewards every month, that type of thing. And that becomes exhausting. And so I think that was one of the challenges initially, getting people on board. And one of the challenges we've had over the last several years is getting out of that mindset of it's just a reward system and really moving towards this is more of a climate, a culture framework, integrating resiliency and building relationships. That's where we're really focused on now.
Thank you. You have another question, and yes. It says, what was the data system you used? If you can repeat the name of it and discuss whether it integrates with our student information system.
So our data application does integrate with our student information system, but it's an in-house data application. It was built by our school system web developers. So it's not a particular system that you can purchase. It was just totally developed from scratch for us. We told them what we wanted and it was developed. It's gone through a few revisions and it's starting to get out of date. So we're actually moving probably towards a system called Click. That is a purchase system. So we're really moving, I think, towards that because we're going to be able to put all data in that, discipline, academic data, and that should integrate with our school information system too. So.
And for you guys that don't know, Click is kind of like another product out there called Tableau, where you load data in to allow schools to manipulate the data to provide a visual representation of the data that can allow for deeper dives. Do you have another question related, which is why didn't you choose Swiss?
In the beginning, we didn't choose Swiss because it did not integrate with our student information system. So people would have to put in discipline incidents twice. They would have to put it into our student information system because that's required in our system. And then they would have to put it into Swiss. Plus, it costs money to use Swiss. So that's why we didn't initially use it. And now we have our own data system that's working pretty well. So, but I think that last year we had looked at Swiss again, and I think it does now integrate with some student information systems.
Lisa, is it possible that you'd be willing to share your email with participants in case someone wanted to ask more specific questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. I think that's all the questions in the chat box, but I wondered if you could speak about one other thing, which you've sort of hit on a few times, but I think, again, is a challenge for divisions that are starting out, which is what kinds of things did you do to get schools to jump on that bandwagon, right? Especially when it was mandated and you had schools that had intentionally chosen not to do it. What were the kinds of things that you all did at the division level to really try to gather that compliance and get people excited and implement?
Right, and that did happen. There were some schools that had said no thanks, and then we said, well, now you have to. And one of the questions from some administrators was, well, do you want compliance or do you want collaboration? Of course, we want both. So I think one of the things that my predecessor did very well was provide data. So she had brought data to the schools and said, this is what we're looking at. Here are some strengths. Here are some weaknesses. Here is how implementing PBIS could help your school. Because we had data from our other schools that showed decreases in discipline referrals, increases in those climate surveys that were taken by students, staff, and parents. So it was really about the data and how that drove decisions in other schools.
Thank you. And I had one other question, if you don't mind, and then we'll pause and let some other people see if they have questions, which is what kinds of decision-making and philosophy did you employ when you guys determined how you wanted to share that message out with our major stakeholders and parents in the community?
So how we wanted to share about PBIS?
Yes. So, for example, what kinds of things did you think about what elements to share versus perhaps what not to share, or how to frame that message, again, so that you're getting not only support from the schools, but support from the community and an understanding of what you're doing?
Right. Well, for PBIS, for parents, we really focused on the positive relationships, the positive expectations at the school, and we provided parents with information about how they could use those same tenets at home. We shared some national data that was easy to understand about the benefits of PBIS, but we really took out a lot of that jargony language and just talked about, you know, we're teaching your kids behavior, and we want them to achieve and succeed and engage in instruction. And when they're feeling comfortable at school, when they feel like we support them, they're just going to do better. So we really had to take out a lot of that jargon. Some of our schools still call it PBIS, but some of our schools rebranded and just call it something else that makes more sense for their school and for their communities. So it's not such a program type title.
Well, thank you. Dr. Flipovich is here, and so if you have any other questions, please make sure you put them in the chat box, and we'll stay on for the next couple of minutes, and then if there aren't any questions, then we'll thank you for your time.
Okay. I will say, one of the comments in my bio was about using PBIS at home. And that's one of the ways that I started to better understand PBIS is when I started to use some of the strategies I'd learned through the classroom management systems, especially about giving feedback and correcting errors. When I started using that with my son when he was 3, it made such a difference in his behavior and our relationship. It was like magic. And you would think as a school psychologist that I would know how to do these things at home, but we don't always do the same thing at home that we do at school. So really focusing on the way I talked to my child made a huge difference and helped me understand how to better teach it to others as well.
Thanks for sharing.
Sure.
All right, it looks like there are no further questions, and thank you for sharing your email, Dr. Flipovich. It's in the chat box for those of you that are interested, and if you don't see it, you're welcome to respond to me via email, and I will share it with you. We are trying to record this presentation, so we will let you know if we have a successful recording and make that available. And there are comments back to you, Lisa, to say thank you. Yes. They enjoyed your story and they enjoyed your presentation.
Well,
so
thank you
all very much.
Bye.